Raw Story released some segments of a recent Reza Aslan speech, and what struck me from this is how I think him and Sam Harris actually agree on 2 out of 3 points that he makes here. Now, there's no denying that these guys despise each other from things they've said about each other and how they've gone back and forth on Twitter. But let's get specific here. Let's listen and let's break it down. And then also later on, I'll tell you some more relevant facts about their feud. But I find this really interesting, and I do think that they don't disagree as much as they think they do.
In this great debate, some of it legitimate, some of it not so legitimate, about whether we are at war with Islam or whether Islam has nothing to do with this at all. You have one side saying that ISIS represents Islam, and you have another side that's saying no, that this is not about Islam in any way. And of course, this has become yet another one of these polarizing, conversations that has divided this country. But as with most things, I think the answer is far more complicated than that. I certainly understand the desire for any person of faith, any community of faith, to distance itself from radicals and extremists within that community, to say that they are not us, they don't represent our values. You saw this not too long ago when Anders Breivik, the self-described Christian warrior, killed 77 children in Norway in the name of his identity as a Christian warrior. He thought that he was fighting some battle against creeping Islam, and so decided to kill a bunch of children instead. The immediate response that you heard across the gamut was that this guy has nothing to do with us. He has nothing to do with Christianity. His actions are so beyond the pale of anything that you could subscribe to as mainstream Christian ideas that he is just not Christian, regardless of how he defines himself. I get that. You hear the same thing from Muslims all the time. You see the grotesque actions of these militants like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, the murderous ideology that they are implanting upon large parts of the Middle East. And of course, it's perfectly natural for Muslims to look at that and say, that has nothing to do with us. That is so far removed from anything that can be subscribed to as mainstream Islamic thought or ideas or beliefs that they are not Muslims. I get that, but it's not very helpful, and frankly, it's not true. A Muslim is whoever says he's a Muslim. The end. A Christian is whoever says he's a Christian. A Jew is whoever says he's a Jew. If you are saying that this is your identity and that you are acting according to your identity, then we should probably just take your word for it. Because it is not helpful to just simply say, no, that has nothing to do with religion, it has nothing to do with Christianity, it has nothing to do with Islam whatsoever. That doesn't solve any problems. Because like it or not, these actions are being done in the name of specific religion.
Wow. These actions are being done in the name of a specific religion. So what he's saying is there are religious extremists, and they are doing violence in the name of their religion. So when people say, ISIS has nothing to do with Islam, Reza Aslan is saying, no, that's not true. So I think that on this point, they agree 100%, Reza and Sam, whether or not they realize it. Now, I do think that Sam would add an asterisk, though, and he would also say, yeah, but statistically speaking, internationally, Muslims are doing more terrorism in the name of their religion than any other religion right now. And that's actually true internationally. But then I think Reza would fire back and he would say something along the lines of, yeah, but in America, that's not the case. So when you fearmonger about that in America, like in the country itself, that's irrational because that's not what the threat is here. And on that point, Reza would be 100% correct if he were to say that. I like how I'm making arguments for both sides here and then defending them as if they're really talking to each other. Apparently, it's all in my own head. But that's something that I would like both to acknowledge, and honestly, I think both of them, to one extent or another, have. It'd be good if Reza kind of agreed and spoke more about the fact that, yes, statistically speaking, internationally, Muslim terrorism is the most pervasive kind of religious terrorism, and it's the one people fear the most internationally. It'd be good if he spoke about that more, but it would also be good if Sam Harris was like, yeah, while we do talk about Islamic extremism all the time and how that's horrific, yeah, within the United States, it is factually true that the problem here are the right-wing terrorists and the Christian terrorists.
So how do we confront that? What do we do about that? Well, I think that the knee-jerk response, and it's a response that we're getting a lot nowadays, is to just simply blame religion, right? If ISIS is killing in the name of Islam, then it's Islam's fault, right? If the price tag terrorists that the Israeli government itself refers to as Jewish terrorists are terrorizing and killing and vandalizing in the name of Judaism, then it's Judaism's fault. I understand that response too. It's just a very simple and unsophisticated way of thinking. Listen, I am totally fine with you blaming Islam for ISIS. If you want to place the responsibility for ISIS on Islam, that's fine with me. As long as you also credit Islam for the people who are fighting ISIS. Because while it's true that ISIS are Muslim, so are the tens of thousands of people who are battling against ISIS right now. So are the tens of thousands of victims of ISIS. They're all Muslim too. So if ISIS is Muslim, but the people that they're killing are also Muslim, and the people who are fighting ISIS are also Muslim, what does that say about Islam? Not much, actually. Nothing significant. Nothing that you can, make some grand generalizations about. If you want to blame religion for all the bad things that religion does, fine. As long as you are willing to credit religion for all the good things that religion does, then I'm okay with that. But of course, that's usually not the case.
I think there's a little bit of a false equivalency going on here, where he's like, well, bad things are done in the name of religion and good things are done in the name of religion. Yeah, but I mean, by the numbers, what is more prevalent, right? By the numbers, when you look at the effect of, fundamentalist religious movements, is it more good or is it more bad done in the name of it? Now, that's what I think Sam's response would be. And also, at the beginning there, Reza is basically saying, well, it's not as simple as saying it's just the religion to blame. He's saying it's more sophisticated than that. And my response is, sometimes. See, this is an area where I think both Reza and Sam are a little bit wrong. I think Sam is actually more right on this than Reza, where Reza always does this thing where it's like, it can never be as simple as it's just the ideology based on the Holy Book. No, sometimes it really is, man. Look at the KKK. They were Christian terrorists. They might have had a narrative of victimization, but they weren't actually victims. They were keeping blacks down forever. And they pointed to Bible verses and said, this is what we're using to justify, keeping slaves and being horrific terrorists. So in that case, it was just purely ideological and purely based off of their religion and their belief system. It had there were no, real life grievances that were rationalizations for their actions or could explain their actions outside of this is our doctrine and this is what we're implementing. If you look at the examples of some of the Gulf states who we're allies with, a lot of them have, jihadists come and give speeches at their biggest mosques, and they broadcast it on state TV, and the jihadists just spew anti-American, anti-Israel propaganda, and they talk about doing terrorism. And in that case, you can't say, hey, there are other factors that are leading into them being radicalized. In that case, it really is just the religion, because we're talking about really oil-rich states here. So it's not like, big bad America has been fucking them over for so long, and they're just poor and impoverished, and they're lashing back against the great imperialist. No, in that case, that's not true. In that case, it really is just based on the religion. So I get it, Reza. Yeah, sometimes it is more complicated than saying it's just the religion and it's just the ideology based off that religion. But sometimes it's not. And, to switch here and back Reza up for a second and to say sometimes it isn't as simple as saying it's just a religion. If you look at the Palestinian territories, my contention is that one of the reasons they became further radicalized and more fundamentalist religious is that they've been occupied for decades. So in that case, of course, they're going to turn to people who are more militant and more fundamentalist because those are the only people saying, let's get the invaders off of our land. So in that case, it is more complicated than it's just the religion. In the case of Iran, I think the same thing. I mean, America has been fucking over Iran for a really long time. Overthrew their government in 1953, put in a dictator. The guy who we overthrew, Mohammad Mossadegh, was going to nationalize the oil industry and make the people of Iran wealthy. We said, we put in our dictator, and everybody was repressed viciously. So yes, in that case, you have to say it's not just the religion that led them to be radicalized. It was secular circumstances, poverty, and other political issues that then push people into the arms of fundamentalists. So sometimes it is more complicated than it's just the religion. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it really is just ideological, book-based stupidity where somebody buys into a literal interpretation of a holy book and then they carry out logical conclusions based on the religion. So now let's go to, that's the area where they disagree. Now let's go to the final point here where they agree 100%, and I don't think they would acknowledge it.
The issue for us, those of us who are faithful, those of us who perhaps do not have a faith, but at the very least have a far more sophisticated understanding of religion and faith, is how to confront religious radicalism, religious militancy. Is it to simply blame religion and try to excise religion from public life? Because that's absurd. That's not going to happen. Or is it the case that what we need is for religious people, people who share the faith of those faiths that are being used to promote bigotry and misogyny and violence and intolerance? Is it the responsibility of those people to counter-ideologize these ideologies? Is it the responsibility of people of faith to come up with a response, a counter to these theologies, to these arguments? That's a conversation that I would be very interested in having with you guys. My personal opinion, and I believe this truly to be the case, is that the answer to religious misogyny is religious feminism. That the answer to religious war is religious peace. That the answer to religious intolerance is religious pluralism. That to confront the negative ways in which religion is used in society requires religious people who are willing to be as loud, as bold, as fearless in promoting the positive ways in which religion plays a role in society.
Yeah, I think they totally agree on that. I mean, Sam is working with a guy named Majid Nawaz right now who's genuinely trying to reform Islam. And that appears to be exactly what Reza Aslan is calling for here. While at the same time arguing that, you should have peaceful voices within religions trying to win the debate and win the theological debate. At the same time that's going on, I would like to try to do the more ambitious thing, which is people who are atheists and agnostics and secular people make the argument that, why don't you guys just, leave the religion? You don't need to believe in any of the bullshit. It's nicer if you believe in a better interpretation of the bullshit, but maybe if you believe in none of it, it'll be better for everybody. So while Reza might disagree with that latter part and say, well, that's pie in the sky and that's never going to happen, that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. That doesn't mean we shouldn't make logical arguments for atheism and agnosticism and secularism. But again, I think they agree on the main point. The main point is, right now, you're not going to have people, immediately start listening to new atheists like myself and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, who are already deeply embedded in these religions and have fundamentalist interpretations. But is there a better chance that somebody from within the religion can say, no, you misinterpreted the thing about jihad because here's a better way to look at it, blah, 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 blah. Yes! So on that, I think they agree, and they don't even really understand just how much they agree.